Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars After Dark. So this time we're going to be reviewing episode 2 of Star Wars Rebels, which is technically possibly episode 3. I'm not really sure how they number them since episodes 1 and 2 were kind of like a two-parter. So this is Droids in Distress is the name of it, and that's either episode 2 or episode 3, depending how you want to view it. So it starts off on the really classic just blank starfield, and then the ship coming in, and then the bigger ship coming in, which was one of the first things that blew people away about Star Wars when the original one came out, because it just had never been done before. Like this kind of perspective had just not been done in film, and Lucas was original as far as that was concerned, and so it really grabbed the audience right off the hook to have this immense ship flying over their heads. So it kind of puts you in this 3D perspective of being behind the ship and underneath the ship, and it's just not something that they had done before. But then swapping around and going to this direct head-on shot, I just love this shot. I think this is absolutely beautiful. Of course, I also just absolutely love the symmetry of looking right down it. And then we also have the very nice lighting on the one half of the ship. You can see the shadows on the other half of the ship. I'm not really sure what the source is, but you could assume there's some kind of sun or something that's over there to the right. But that's just a little bit of a very subtle filmmaking thing that when you're making a scene, especially in CG, that you always want to be kind of aware of what your light sources are and where your shadows should be falling, because it would be very easy to not be focusing on those things, and the entire thing just looks terrible and it looks inconsistent, especially if you are doing a lot of stuff with the same scene and different ships in the same scene. All the light sources on all of the ships have to be the exact same. So anyway, I was actually kind of confused coming into this because it's just like Clone Wars, where you come into something like halfway through. So it comes in and they're running away from a Star Destroyer, and I'm like, does this tie into the last one somehow? Because I thought the last one ended, I think, with them escaping from a Star Destroyer and going to light speed. This one started with them in normal space running from a Star Destroyer, and it's like there was a gap in time there, and they went on another mission, but it ended it's starting right where the last one ended, so it's just kind of confusing, and they really, in my opinion, should have kind of mixed those up, have them running from a different ship, or maybe they're running from someone other than the Empire, or maybe they're just on a planet or something, so it's just something that breaks up the end of the last one, the beginning of this one. Maybe it wasn't as confusing. Maybe if I did a second watch, then it nothing would be odd to me, but this one definitely felt odd. And this right here is the problem that Disney introduced. They should be able to, granted it's 30 years in the future from where this happens, but they should be able to track those guys through hyperspace. And Disney has tied every future instance of space fighting to the inevitability that they will be tracked through hyperspace. And maybe that's part of the reason that they're backtracking. They're not doing anything post the sequel trilogy, at least as of right now. That could be part of the reason, is that they've boxed themselves into several different corners from several different writing perspectives, whether it was their use of the Force, whether it was killing off all of the Skywalkers, which was the main family that everyone cared about, whether it was killing off all of the Jedi again, or whether it was things like hyperspace ramming or hyperspace tracking. There's just all of these things that they added in that detract from the entire universe going forward. And anyway, so it's, again, since this is 30 years in the past, it's not really applicable to that, but it just immediately reminded me, oh wait, if this was sequel trilogy or post, they would have just jumped into hyperspace and tracked them. We don't have this whole escape to hyperspace thing that Star Wars coined that entire thing. So coming in, one thing that's kind of immediately obvious, although it might be a little more in the background because they don't highlight it or anything, but Ezra, blue hair, is sitting in either the captain or the co-captain's chair. And the fact that he is sitting there, with this being his theoretically his first like legitimate mission, that kind of just illustrates the fact that he has been like fully accepted into this little family, and that's even kind of a status of power for him to be up there in the captain's chair or co-captain's chair. And that may be just kind of illustrating the point that as a Jedi in training that he has a lot more promise than everyone else. Whether or not that's like an intentional thing that the filmmakers did, or whether that everyone else just already had their assigned seats, or maybe he's sitting in Ponytail's seat and that's normally his seat. So at this point, I don't know that we actually know for sure. So at this point, they're all just talking about how the whatever little crime thing that they just didn't go off the way they anticipated, and Ponytail was just kind of being all cocky about it and all that kind of stuff. So next we figure out that Ponytail already knows about, so they were talking about how they don't have enough money, they need money to get fuel and all this kind of stuff. Really gave me more hints of Firefly, which I know that I had said last time, so I don't know if that's like intentionally something that they've done with this show, is that they put in like, one of the writers is a fan of Firefly and they put in several different hints. But anyway, it's not quite as normal in the Star Wars universe for us to hear them talking about needing money for fuel, even though we have heard in Solo, I think we've heard that a few times, but it still is more on the rare side. Whereas in other sci-fi, in other sci-fi stories, they have that quite a bit, where finding fuel to power the ship and then food for themselves, like those are like always the main priorities for people. So anyway, Ponytail is like, well, that one we may have messed up that crime thing, whatever they were going to steal, but he has another idea, and they don't even have to go talk to the devil horn dude. They can just go on and do it, because he knows. He already knows what the hit is somehow. So then they go to this really artistic looking spaceport so they could get on a ship and trick their way into finding out which hangar the stolen guns are in. And this whole thing seemed so not just convoluted, but coincidental. Like, for this to work, they had to have gotten here the exact same time that the what's-her-name emissary and the Aquajalin, whatever homeboy there is, they had to get there the exact same time they were there in order for this thing to go down. So it's not like it's not like Ponytail just knew there was a warehouse where the guns were and they could go steal them. No, it's like he knew this exact meeting in this exact place on this exact plane, and without those exact things lining up, without his last mission failing in order to let them have time to do this one and to get there at the exact proper time for this to happen, it's just really too many coincidences for really good story writing. And then you have 3PO and R2 roll up, which at first I loved just because I love seeing them, and part of me just really laughed at the idea of having R2 and fake R2 like in the same scenes together. And I just noticed that the homeboy there in the background, he is either the same species or it's actually like literally the same dude that was about to get kidnapped is the wrong word. He was about to get arrested by the stormtroopers in the very first episode. He had like the purple fruits. Isn't that the same dude? I think it is. Okay, regardless. So at this point, everyone is trying to figure out how to get rid of the rich lady's translators so that so that Rainbow Hair can go and be the translator, figure out where everything is stored. Before we get there, though, the idea that it is a robot that is flying the plane like I love that. There are so few instances of robots doing the menial tasks in Star Wars, and that's like it should be far more frequent that we see that kind of thing. Granted, Star Wars being less of a sci-fi, as David has talked about several times, it's less of a sci-fi and more of a fantasy. So that may be why we still see people doing menial tasks, because in a fantasy you have to see people doing menial things so that they could do something epic and rise up, through the kind of, fantasy thing. But still, I really like the idea of seeing this droid that was flying the ship. So they are flying through hyperspace for a little bit, and then fake R2 picks a fight with, and I've already forgot the kid's name. He picks a fight with blue hair, and then that is their way of tricking the pilot robot into saying that all robots need to go into the back of the plane. So all of this convoluted mess was just their way, again, of getting 3PO, who is the translator, away from the rich lady so that Rainbow Hair could go and translate instead of 3PO. Like I said, it's not just the problem of it being convoluted, it's the coincidence of all of this coming together at the same time. It would have been so much simpler and so much more believable for them to just know where the guns were in transit, and they hop on the train and try to do a train robbery, that kind of thing. Like, that would be way more believable than this kind of whole scenario. But at the same time, it played out really well. I was really entertained during the whole thing, so I'm not saying it was like the most terrible thing ever. I even really liked the way that they set it up and the way that it was choreographed and everything. I thought it was very entertaining, with the whole little fight between blue hair and fake R2. And even the dialogue that was going on in here, we still get like a little bits of backstory that just kind of add stuff to it. Like Rainbow Hair knows that the level 5 translation things are like actually a thing in the Imperial Academy. So that's either hinting that she has been part of the Imperial Academy, or she's just really done her homework. And that also kind of hints as to what the rich lady has gone through, that she, immediately knew what those level 5s were as well. So let's see. So then there's another fake 3PO back there. I'm not really sure what his deal is. So we got fake R2, fake 3PO, another fake 3PO, and real R2. And 3PO is missing a leg? Has he always missed a leg? It's like silver and instead of gold. I'm gonna feel really bad if it's been that way like forever, and I just like didn't notice until now. So anyway, so during this whole time, fake R2 and R2 are kind of like fighting back and forth. And then we get down to landing on whatever the planet is, and kind of all the heroes kind of like go their separate ways. And remember, in the midst of this, Rainbow Hair had gone and talked to the rich lady, and she had mistranslated on purpose which hangar the guns were going to be in. So she told rich lady they were going to be in hangar 17, but then she tells Ezra that they are going to be in hangar 7. So he can't just like walk into hangar 7, so he has to go through this whole convoluted thing of climbing on top of the towers and then going and jumping from tower to tower, which we also get like a little bit of character development for him, because he's assumedly this is the first time that he's kind of like actively trying to use the Force to make these super long jumps, and the first time that he knows what he's doing, that he's purposefully using superpowers. And we get to see a little bit of a reaction from him. So then this jump just made me laugh. Like, he just fell 50 feet, landed right on his tailbone, and didn't break anything. Like, Yeah, he's a Jedi. Yeah, he could use the Force, but he didn't do anything to cushion his landing, and he definitely would have shattered his coccyx right there. That was probably really poorly choreographed, and they didn't really think about the actual weight that he would have landed with and how painful that actually would have been there. So he goes and opens up the doors, and everyone is just sitting there waiting for him. Which again, I mean, I get why they did that, but at the same time, why couldn't they have hacked into it from the other side? Because we've seen them do stuff like that before. Although I guess it's been Ezra that's hacked into all the other doors previously. But still, if that's the case, why couldn't they have hacked into this one, or why couldn't Fake R2 have hacked into this one? Which also seems like it could have been, a logical step for them to do. So anyway, they've got the stuff. So at this point, as they are opening the boxes, like no one really knew what was in them. But then they start to open them up, and then Big Lemur realizes what is actually in them. And it's apparently it's the guns that were used to like wipe out pretty much his entire race on his home planet. And so as soon as he sees the guns, he kind of starts like freaking out about it. And we get a little more development on that later on in the story. But then we skip over to the wealthy lady who is in Hangar 17, and there's nothing there. And at this point, 3PO is properly translating the Aqualian. I feel like I'm so close on that name. And he is saying, why are we here? We're supposed to be in Hangar 7. This is the wrong one. And then Fake R2 is trying to distract them. And then at that point, Rich Lady realizes, wait, this is the same droid that made me get a different translator. And then she realizes the whole thing was a setup. So she orders the troopers to all head over there. And Angry Lemur kind of does something smart and just tries to pass it off and goes up to get really nice up and close up in their faces so that he could be in, because he's pretty much a Wookiee, and those kind of fighters want to be hand to hand. They want to be as close as possible because their strength is their biggest asset. And he also doesn't, from what I can tell, he doesn't carry a blaster, even though he called that bow staff thing like a staff gun or a staff blaster. I don't remember what he called it. I think that was a little bit later in this episode, but anyway, so he's doing all this epic fighting, and we get to see him actually start using his whatever bow staff thingy, which looks very much like what the Jedi hunters used in episode 3, General Grievous's droid Jedi hunters. We see Obi-Wan and Anakin kill several of them when they're on the ship. And I don't know if that's what this was patterned after, although he says that it was like he says later on that was like the official weapon of the Royal Guard or something like that. So then they have then they manage to get all the stuff. They get up into the ship, and it's kind of neat that a couple times we've actually and we see 3PO and R2 go up in the ship because they think these are two separate groups. They think there's the one robber group and then the one good group who are saving the guns. So they go with the savers and don't realize they're the same group. But one kind of neat thing was that when they're going up here, like Tentacle Girl has gotten used to just taking off and knowing that Ponytail is going to be able to like do a Jedi jump and get into the ship. And I think we've seen that a couple times, and it's just something kind of, it's just a consistent part of his, character abilities that we're consistently seeing. And that's always really nice to see that they have, developed this kind of like fact sheet of the character. And they're saying for each scene, what can this character do? Okay, how does that apply to this scene? So then at this point, they're taking off again. And then we have this whole interaction with 3PO and R2. And R2 is apparently recording stuff this entire time. We find out later for him to give to Bail Organa, who has been their master since the end of episode 3. So they are on the ship. They are talking for a while. Lemur is still talking about how much he hates the idea of these guns. He doesn't want them to get out because of what they mean to him and his people, etc. Ponytail's telling him how it's still a good thing because they're taking them out of the hands of the Empire. And then at some point... so then the rich lady... goes because she was like an actual Imperial officer or something like that. But she goes and calls up Mutton Chops and is telling him details about what happened with this robbery and everything. And he's kind of piecing all of these deals together. And then what is the detail that I think the detail that they pieced together was the species that lemur is, and then somehow that gave them a clue as to where they were going to be. Nope, nix that. The reason that they found them was because somebody turned them in, wasn't it? Now I can't even remember. But it was at that point that he figured out that there was that connection with the blasters and Lemur. So then at this point we see that Lemur is sulking in his room because he's upset about the whole situation. Ezra's just upset because the other dude's upset. And then he and Tentacle Girl have a little talk back and forth about it, and she's like, "Go easy on him. This is his history." We see, she's telling him about the history. There's a horn dude. So at this point, we get a little bit more of the backstory of the guns, and he's trying to sell them. Ponytail's trying to sell them to the devil dude. Oh, yeah, that's how they find them. It was 3PO. 3PO does a distress call and calls the... which still doesn't make any sense to me, because because he's working for Bail to gather evidence to take the guns away from the Imperials, so he should know the Imperials are the bad guys, but then he goes and calls the Imperials for help, unless he was just doing like an open distress call that could go to anyone, and it just happened to go to the Imperials. I don't know, for whatever reason. So at first, like, it kind of made a lot of sense that 3PO would do that, because he's always painted as this like really timid, really scared character, and he would definitely go and call for help in that situation. But at the same time, that implies that he doesn't know the extreme basics of the situation, which I guess also might be true for his character. So at this point, we are just getting more dialogue with the devil dude, and they're talking about the guns a little bit more, and then like right in the midst of this, the Imperials show up. They drop a couple of walkers, and here was one of my biggest problems with this episode when they introduce the. So they've talked about how powerful these guns are, and that they could pretty much take down the ship, and then we see Ponytail actually like take one of them and take down one of the walkers right here. So like one shot from the thing takes down one of the walkers. So they're scrambling, trying to figure out how they could win when they have like 50 of these guns, and they could just pull them out and like shoot the ship that's dropping off everything, shoot the ship before it even takes out the stormtroopers. And like maybe they don't want to be those guys and use it on organic beings, because apparently that's like worse than using it on ships. But still, like, the idea that these guns were used just as incendiary devices instead of using them as guns when they're like powerful guns in the first place, and that was the whole thing about them. And they never used them. Well, Ponytail uses it once as an actual gun, and then the rest of the time they're like, "Oh no, we can't use these. Let's turn them into bombs." Like what sense does that make? Like, if you have the most powerful guns ever made, you're about to be captured, just use the most powerful guns ever made. Like, if you really have that big of a moral phobia to using them, point it at a rock and blow up the rock, and then tell them, "Hey, stormtroopers, if you don't run away, I'm going to do this to you." And now you've given them a means of escape, and if they don't do it, then disintegrate them. I mean, it's a kid's show. I know. Okay, so Mutton Chops is wearing his Mutton Chop helmet, and then he pulls out a bow staff as well, because he's apparently like super awesome, and Lemur is like, wait, what's up? You're not supposed to have that, because like only the royals of his elite guard and his homeworld are supposed to have that kind of staff. And this was another problem that I had with this entire episode was like I love bow staff fighting. I've done a good bit. I love playing with a bow staff, but it is very difficult. The fluidity that he moves with, like borders on he should be a Jedi. That's the problem I have with it. Like the way that he moves frequently during this fight makes me think that they should have choreographed this for him to be a Sith. That's not to say that normal humans can't move like this. That's not to say that normal humans can't have these kinds of reactions. But for the most part, bow staff fights come down to, or just using a bow staff in general, but like it all comes down to the amount of leverage that you have and the amount of power that you could generate. And Lemur is a physically stronger species. Like there is no way that anyone should be able to beat him in a staff-to-staff fight, because the amount of force that he could generate is so far and beyond anything that the other dude can do. Like even just that, where he just like kicks him in the chest, like Lemur shouldn't have even moved because he's so much more solidly built than a regular human. So I mean, I had a problem with how this fight was choreographed, but I kind of get that it seems like they did this on purpose because they wanted to, I mean, you could see how humbled that he's looking right here, right? And that probably was the entire reason. Again, I have not seen anything past this, but I'm assuming that was the entire reason of this fight, was that he's always been like really cocky, and they wanted to humble him and kind of start establishing a character arc. Maybe they wanted to build up, some kind of animosity between him and Mutton Chops. But at this point, Ezra sees his friend about to die and gets really angry and instinctively does a massive force push that throws Mutton Chops back against a like rock outcropping. Now at this point, I guess Lemur's just kind of been like electrocuted halfway to death. So everyone's just trying to figure out how do we get him on board. Maybe he's not hurt so much as he's just like upset with the whole situation. It was kind of hard to tell. So everyone's really proud of Ezra for stepping up, and then Ponytail tells him, "Hey, your training is going to start soon," because I guess apparently you could use the Force. That the logic never really tracked, because Ezra already proved himself in the first 2 episodes that he is strong in the Force, blah blah blah. So and then there was dialogue earlier on about how Ponytail was like for some reason reluctant to actually start his training, whether that was on purpose or not. They never really hinted at. But after Ezra did this massive force push, Ponytail's like, yeah, your training starts tomorrow. So was it like he was waiting for Ezra to step up and start doing something? Or was this like somehow another test that he needed to actually see another bit of proof that Ezra was force sensitive or something? Like, I don't really understand what they were going with this bit of his, like character arc. So that's coming up on the end of it. They had, they still made their money because they figured out somehow who the droids belonged to, found out that they belonged to Bail Organa, although I think he says something specifically about how you didn't tell them my name. I guess 3PO probably just straight up told them who they belonged to. And then Bail pays them like a bounty for bringing back the droids. And then the whole thing ends with 3PO going off for like moral counseling or something stupid. And then Bail is saying, hey, please tell me you recorded this whole thing, because I need to know everything that they were talking about. And he specifically says, which is kind of a cheesy line, but he's like, tell me about these rebels. The whole show being called Star Wars Rebels, and the Rebel Resistance. So like I said, kind of cheesy, but at the same time, it also made me grin because it's kind of one of those cheesy in a good way kind of things. But then something else that I just loved does that look familiar right there? That is directly like his daughter in episode 4. Well, his, adopted daughter. So when Leia is first giving R2 like the mission, she is like putting a card inside his is basically like a future SD card, and she's like putting it in his reader slot, just like Bale is doing right now, and it's even framed like pretty close the same way, only this one is like in a hallway and she was in like a dark room with R2. But this symmetry with those two shots, like that has to have been done on purpose. It's just too perfect for that not to have been intentional on the part of the filmmakers. And then that's how that episode ends right there, is with the droid R2 kind of relating everything that happened, and giving all of the names over to Bale. And then at some point in the future, I assume that he's going to kind of team up with them, and they'll start working together with the rebels, with the Rebel Resistance, against the Empire. So that was episode 3, or possibly 2, depending on how you want to count it. And tomorrow I will get started on episode 3/4, whichever the next one is. And before I go, I want to show you something really, really cool. One of my coworkers found this in his attic. Wait, let me turn this off. Let me turn that off. Okay. One of my coworkers found this in his attic. Which way is left? There. Is cool. So it's not like vintage. It's from 96, I believe, where they did like this whole re-release thing when all of the special editions were coming out in theaters. But that's still like pre-2000 is also still kind of getting to be vintage at this point. But still, I like literally do not own anything remotely like this. So, this is really cool. I'm quite excited about that. So anyways, thank you everyone for joining. If you want to check out, I have some very in-depth, very highly edited video essays that are also on my channel. This is, I've attempted to make this as straightforward and unedited as possible, so I could just get through my reviews, get through my analyses of all of these, mainly so I could watch Obi-Wan when it comes out and actually know everything that's going on. But if you want some, really in-depth, edited, written, all that kind of stuff. Like I actually added up all the time I spent, and just for a 1-hour video, I had like 23 hours of editing for my last one. And that wasn't even including writing or anything like that. So a ton of work goes into that stuff. I'll link those up here if that's something y'all are interested in. And thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.